Thanks everybody for attending this session. The goal today is to kind of go back to the basics, because what I see every day using Revizto is these great advanced workflows, incredible projects going from the giga projects in the Middle East to even schools in the deepest, darkest parts of the UK. And we're seeing Revizto being implemented throughout. But what I'm not seeing an awful lot is things being standardized. And sometimes the little things that should be at the start of a project are actually going wrong, or they're not put in there correctly. So I'm just going to go over some points today just to kind of reiterate, get that point across of how a project should be set up. So just a little bit about myself. My name is James Lawrence, and I'm the Implementation Service Manager for the North of Europe and the Middle East. I got 20 years industry experience. It still doesn't count for getting ID'd when I'm getting margaritas upstairs, but well, that's part and parcel of this very bizarre law that you've got in Colorado. And I had a very organic growth to get to where I am now. I wanted to be a journalist when I was younger, and I got put in my place very quickly by my mother and said, learn a trade. And it worked out very well for myself. So listen to your mothers, they always know best. So I got an apprenticeship, learning AutoCAD, Release 14, CNC machines, this kind of stuff, and learned how to use the tools, and then got a job working for RevUP as a design consultant, learned how to use Revit off my own back, and then got into BIM management as well. So I've kind of learned as I've gone along. I've learned from people in the industry as well. Just kind of, it's a cliche, but you've kind of got to be a sponge. You've got to learn the ways that people do things. I've worked for RevUP, WSP, Kia, Balfour Beatty, Kilpatrick, and I've been self-employed for a while as well. And I joined Revizto in 2021. I kind of bullied my way into the job because I took Revizto into Balfour Beatty. And one day my director was in, and I kind of pulled him to one side and said, how do I get a job at Revizto? I absolutely love the tool. Long waiting game, but I got there in the end, and it's been hands down the best career move I've ever made. I'm a big music fan. I've been playing in bands since I was 17 years old, and I love films. Huge cinephile. I've had my own podcast. I used to put on film nights as well, and I'm a lifelong fan of Manchester United for my sins. Probably a lot of people don't know who they are, but they're my local football team. There's no booze, so I'm in good company. Bit about myself there. There's me shouting my head off playing in bands. My podcast was called the AECO, so I kind of did like film sequels with guests, my film nights as well. And just up at the top there's my football team. So I coach my son's football team. It's incredibly rewarding to just watch these 7 lunatics run around the pitch, and it's great. My son's not blurred out because I'm happy to show him, and then just my family on the right, who I do miss dearly because I am on the road a lot at the minute, and even though this event's been good, I am very, very much looking forward to get home. So I wanted to just give a quick overview of Revizto as a product, and what better way to show that than everybody's big gargantuan monster Godzilla. And I think it's actually quite an apt description, because the first iteration was just this, beast coming out of the sea, destroying everything in its path, kind of eating up all the competition, and then the subsequent getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think it's a good analogy for where Revizto is. 2011, Revizto was born, and it was born as bringing gaming technology into the world as more of like a model viewer. That's what Revizto was initially. And then there was an area to get into the construction technology. So connecting gaming tech to visual collaboration and live issue tracking. So that was the first area. Then bringing intelligent 2D sheets connected to a 3D model. Then the stamps and the tags with the issue metadata and locations, CDE connectivity, clash automation, and there we are at the end, this big uncontrollable monster, although it's good, I mean that in a positive way, is that we got fully functional site apps, SOC accredited, ISO 27001 accreditation as well. We're working with data centers in all the different regions as well. And that's what really kind of sets us apart from everyone else, is that we're willing to give people what they want in their specific areas. So the agenda today, we're going to go over certain points, and I've set this up in a way that every step is connected to each individual one. So from the viewpoint down to the model comparison, each individual step has a reason. So step 1, viewpoint setup. It sounds very, very easy, and everyone's like, why would you want to bother with viewpoint setups? It adds so much value to the project by just spending a bit of time at the project thinking what views you want. I can list off how many projects that I work with where I go in and there aren't named viewpoints. Viewpoint 1, 2, 3, 4. You've got folders of model names in there as well, and all the views have come through from a Revit model, and it says 3D1, Max's view, Sarah's view. What does that mean? It means nothing. It takes no time at all to go in and set up your projects and have a think, what do you want to see? Within Revizto, you can automatically create your levels as well. So if you're working on skyscrapers, if you were using a Navisworks workflow, there was nothing worse than having to create each individual floor and go through. Whereas in Revizto, inherit those levels, click a button, done. Apply appearance profiles to views as well. Think of those views that are going to add the value in terms of plant rooms, risers, switch rooms, corridors. Have those predefined and set up. So somebody coming in already has that work available for them to come in, inherit, then they can save that view by themselves and then go off and do different things. It really does add a lot of value to the project when you do this. So that's point number one. Search sets and appearance profiles. Now, there's been a lot of talk about search sets over the past couple of days. Jason Howden touched on it yesterday as well. And this is effectively the basis, the predefined information that you're going to be using on your project from cradle to grave. If you get it right in one project, you can inherit that and take it from each subsequent projects. One of the things I always say to the companies what I'm dealing with is try and get that sandbox project loaded into your agreement. If you have that play area where you can go in, set up your standards, set up your search sets, then copy them from project to project, it's done. And that's one thing that I'm really trying to do, especially in the UK at the minute, is get this through line in each individual project. There's a lot of tier one contractors that I work with, and it's always the smallest jobs that are in the best shape. You go to the bigger jobs and it's, how have we not got this through line on the jobs? So by doing this, you're going to add all that information, the predefined search sets to the project. And now we talked about cascading search sets yesterday, and it's a really good way of getting that information to the project team. So start with models. Create your search sets for your models. Because when it comes to the clash automation as well, you're always going to want to do the model against the model. Then take that step down. You're going to break it down into the categories. Ductwork, containment, mechanical equipment, and those packages. Then you can break it down that extra level and start really going into granular. Systems, return air, hot water, chilled water. They all link together. So when you're actually starting to run your clash automation on the project and you're going to do a model against model, you can then pick one of those search sets further on down the hierarchy and say, actually, I don't want to see this. A really common one for this is lighting. Lighting is never a clash because it's hosted to walls, it's hosted to ceilings. If you're working on a project that has 7,000 lights, why would you want to see that 7,000 clashes? Strip it out at the beginning and then you don't have to worry about it when you go through. Then the appearance profiles. Actually, one more on search sets to begin with, rooms. So one of the things that I'm actually trying to drill into people as well is that create your search sets for the rooms on the job as well. Because again, that feeds into the clash automation. With the new way of clashing, we can do an inside clash. So you can actually concentrate on a room and clash what's actually inside it as well. So it's actually good for doing validating of specific rooms. If you have typical rooms going through, you can look at that room, see what items are in there, sign it off. And if you've got 5, 6, 7, 8 typical rooms, done, move on to the next one. That then links into appearance profiles. So this is something, again, that I'm really passionate about pushing through, is having those appearance profiles and those search sets linked to those viewpoints. Are you colorizing systems? Are you colorizing fire doors? One that I always like to do in my demos is pick a fire door, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, color it up. So when that model updates, those views update as well. So keep the colors nice and simple. It then adds a through line to the project and you can actually track what doors are swapped out as well. And because you're linking those search sets to the appearance profiles, each time the model updates, the view updates as well, because you're using those categories pulled from the authoring software. Now, this is one that I'm really passionate about, and I'm actually really starting to drive this now within Revizto, and that's the custom properties. This is quite possibly the biggest way of getting whatever information you want into Revizto. By creating those custom properties, you can actually put any information in. So the big one that I always like to use is carbon tracking. Everybody's talking about carbon. It's on the tip of everybody's tongue. So by adding carbon tracking information in, you can then add that information in, add it into a preset of favorites. Another good one that I like to do is actually link the custom properties to installation tracking. So not only are you doing the work in the office within the Revizto application, you're actually now starting to bring the site team in as well. If someone's walking around with an iPad, they can click on a piece of ductwork. You have the basis of the information in there, size, system, width, location, but you also may have a custom property in there for the installation. Has it been installed correctly? Is it free from defects? Does it need to have a hanger, access panels, all this kind of information? And again, set it up on one project, inherit through the projects as you start to go through. So you're standardizing these custom properties. You can speak to the site guys. What do you want to see in the project? What custom properties are going to add the value to you out on site? Those custom properties then link back into the appearance profile. So we'll be coming onto this in a slide very, very shortly. But with those custom properties again, they then link into the selection inspector. So one that I always like to use for an example is containment. You create your preset of information, select from that search set of the containment, select everything. You then have a quantification of all the containment on the job. You can filter it down by level, you can filter it down by room as well. I've been asked to do a lot of training recently with estimating teams. When I was working at Balfour Beatty, before I joined Revizto, I used to sit with the estimating team, and I had this live working model, updated every single week with all the latest information out there. They're sat there with A3 drawings and rulers, measuring and doing takeoffs. Guys, it's there. Sal was talking about it before. Click of a button, the information's extracted through, and people are still looking at printouts and doing measurements this way. So by bringing these estimating teams in, they have the live model. They're always working on the latest information. They don't have to go to someone else. It's instantly there for them to work with. So the installation tracking that we talked about before. Revizto on site now can obviously be used by the iPad, and it can all be used with the phone app as well. So as you can see, ductwork tracking is a good one that I like to use. You create that preset of information, select it down, then link that to the appearance profile. So the view that I've showed here is level 11 on my demo project. Everything in green has been installed. Everything in red hasn't been installed. So by doing this, again, you're linking the site, create the reports from these custom properties, link them to dashboards and reports. What are the metrics? How far are we installed the ductwork on level 0, going up the grounds? Again, by creating those specific views, as you can see, this has been isolated out, and applying that appearance profile to it as well, you then have a folder within your viewpoints of every single level and all the installation tracking in there as well. And you can do it for whatever you want. That's how open this is. It's open to interpretation. It's what you want to see in the project. It's what value you want to get out of the project as well. Custom statuses is another thing that's coming. I was going to add a bit into this with custom statuses, but I thought it's probably best to go to the booth and see it in practicality rather than me just trying to talk about something which you don't really know about yet either. But again, linking those custom statuses to installation tracking is going to be a huge benefit. So if you're out on site, you see something that hasn't been installed, it's been installed correctly, add that custom status to it as well. What do we need to do to get this resolved? Stamps and facilities management. So obviously, stamps are one way of creating an issue. You can create an issue, put all the metadata in manually, or you can automate it with stamps. I'm going to tell a little story. I was down in deepest, darkest Wales in the UK, and there was this really fancy, all singing and all dancing new hospital that had been built. The client had been handed over a model. They had no idea what to do with it. Because BIM had been mandated on the job, the client thought, yeah, this is great. We've got a working BIM model here. Don't really know what to do with it. Goes in a pen drive, goes in a drawer, move on. So we were trying to adopt Revizto within this area. We put the model into Revizto, showed them how good it is. You've got the rooms, you've got the maps, you've got the drawings, you've got the location. Wherever you want to be within that project, at the click of a button, you can be there. I was sat with the asset manager on the job, and he was talking through what he has to do to basically go around and look at things like fire extinguishers, these maintainable items. Drawings, again, printed off, going around to each individual area, adding a tag, moving on to the next. This was taking him days and days and days to go through this monotonous job. I mean, he was getting his steps in because he was walking through the entire hospital, but he could be sat at his desk using Revizto, click of a button, it's done. So he showed me how he was doing things. I said, right, I'm going to show you how I do it. Within the model, you select an item, bring up the properties of that item. Right-click on one property's pane, CO2 extinguisher. Right-click from that point on, find objects with the same property values. Boom, you found them all. 50, 60, 70 of these fire extinguishers throughout the job. What's the next thing you do? Click on the stamps and add a multiple stamp to each individual one of those fire extinguishers. So you've added the stamp, you have the location metadata. Those stamps are then on the 2D drawings. Those stamps are then in the 3D environment. So when you're working with the filters in the issue tracker, what can you do next? So I've just added an image here of basically an air diffuser. And then, as you can see on this image as well, I don't need to fill in all the metadata to do with this item. The status, again, you either got open, solved, or closed. The custom statuses could be completely different. But for this, I just left it open because at some point, item is going to be maintained. The assignee, David Gomez. The priority, there is no priority with this, but I have set a date against it when it does have to go through and be maintained. So within the issue tracker, instead of having to go through each individual item, you can multi-select, pick every single one of those fire extinguishers, and now you can add comments, you can add attachments to as many items as you want within the issue tracker. So by selecting a text sub, the PDF here, the performance data, select those 50 fire extinguishers or the air terminals, add it, click, move on. You've added all that information to multiple items. His mind was absolutely blown because this took me like 3 minutes to do and it was taking him 3 days to walk around. Those pins are on the drawings. He looks at the drawings and the 2D environment of Revizto, click, done, automatically done. All he has to do is go and look at the ones that may have defects on, out on site, instead of having to walk around each individual item. Saved him a lot of time, a lot of effort, and he was doing this for absolutely everything then. So you could either have a stamp which just says FM or ASIC, or you can actually start to categorize these per the items that you're looking at as well. Now, does anybody use Revizto who is absolutely desperate for a model comparison? I know there's one to begin with. Okay, couple at the back, right. So this is hands down the most requested item I know in Revizto. I know because I was asking for it when I was using it on projects. So I've been spending quite a lot of time to try and figure out how we can compare models against each other within Revizto. And it is a workaround. We hope that the model comparison tool is coming. We had the premium user group on Monday where we had Jason Howden. Everybody had breakout tables, and there was a really good conversation on the model comparison. And the developer was there as well. So we had a first-hand idea of exactly what it is that people want to see. You may have used Assemble before, something along that line. But again, that's web-based. So you're trying to put up all this heavy information into the web. Internet may be rubbish. It may crash. You're going to get frustrated. You're not going to use it. So my workaround is, it's working with search sets, appearance profiles, custom properties, model information, presets. So you're always going to have that latest model in there to begin with. But as a starter, what you've got to do is you've got to pick your battles correctly. Because if you were to get one model and another model and compare those together within Revizto, you're going to be sat in the corner, rocking side to side and weeping because it's going to just look like a big blob of mess. So you need to concentrate on the area that you actually want to review. What does that then go back into? Viewpoints. So I've concentrated on this plant room here. It's a rooftop plant room, all singing and all dancing, poorly coordinated. But what I did do was take that RevUP model, create a new version of it for the demo here. The purpose is starting moving things around. Items are no longer clashing, things like that. I named the model going in as well. So as you can see, within the model management, stage 4, stage 5. It could be a date, it could be an upload person, but you're adding that information in and you're loading that preset. So I have a preset within the load and unload links that says model comparison. The next stage, maybe add a custom property to it. So who the contractor is, the designer, the date, the stage it's at as well. And as you can see, I've actually added a search set in there. I'm just going to have a quick look, sorry. You can kind of see it by grouping items. So I'm searching within the model and then searching in a group for items as well. So for this, I'm only looking for ductwork. The ductwork's what I want to look at. The pipe work I'm fine with. Cable trays don't really want to bother with. The ductwork are the high ticket items because that's clashing with everything in this job. So that's what I want to concentrate on. So I have those two items. Appearance profile is then added. So the stage 4 model is in blue. The stage 5 model is in green. So again, you can go through a small area and actually start to concentrate on the items that you want to get resolved. Create a stamp, takes that snapshot of the items that you're looking at as well. So when you even load those models back in and put everything back in the project, you still have that snapshot of the 2D markup of what needs to be resolved. It's a workaround, but it does work. And I have actually seen quite a few people start to adopt this just while we kind of get up to speed. And I think that's one thing that we kind of pride ourselves on at Revizto, especially as technical support, is that if you have a problem, instead of going, no, we can't do it, sorry, we're just going to move on and do something else, we're going to just have an idea of how we can speak to people in different regions. I was speaking to somebody in America about the model comparison tool as well and how we can get it to work. We were firing ideas around on Slack and had that eureka moment. Model presets is probably going to be the best way to go in a saved viewpoint. So you could have a folder that says model comparison, have that section box around the items. If you're using the search sets to the proper degree they should be used at, you could be looking at risers and maybe just comparing vertical pipe work or vertical duct work. By negating items and looking for slopes as well, you're actually building in that search set that then can be used across different various projects. Now, this is something that's relatively new to Revizto. We had a tier 1 contractor in the UK that was feeling a bit unloved on social media, and they made a very, very big song and dance about it. So how do we actually give them a bit of love and a bit of feedback? So myself and director of EMEA, Reese Lewis, kind of came up with this idea, and it's called a Revizto health check. So what this health check is effectively it's a document with a drop-down checklist going through the application, the workspace, support, clash automation, and training. You then go through the project with that person on site or on a call and basically give it a health check. It's exactly what it says on the tin. You want to know how they are using Revizto and how we can improve their usage of Revizto as well. Because everybody uses it in different ways. I have people that use Revizto for point cloud upload. They don't really work with any models. There are people that just use it for issue tracking on the 2D drawings. There are people that use it for absolutely everything. But what these health checks do is effectively opens up a conversation. Opening up that conversation means that they can bring different people into the meeting. It doesn't have to be a BIM coordinator and the Revizto technical support. It can be anybody. It can be design managers, estimators, client, customers. But by opening up this conversation, you're adding value to the project. It's a simple document to begin with. You send out the email, let's set up a meeting, we're going to have a health check on this job. This is a good idea, little idea of what it looks like. So I recently had one in London, and then I wanted to show just a snapshot of this. So as you can see, administration, application, workspace, support. Not every single one is going to be yes. Just doesn't work that way. There's always going to be a no, we don't want to use it for that. Why aren't you using clash automation? Then it then opens up that conversation. So I was dealing with a contractor in the UK at this meeting, and I probably should have blurred out the names, but it doesn't really matter. You don't know who they are, doesn't know what the company is. And was out on site, and the problem that they were having with Revizto is that IT have blocked it. No, we're using Autodesk. Why would you want to bring another tool in? And they're saying, well, it actually hosts the point clouds, it hosts the models. We can bring people in, it hosts the drawings as well. Yeah, it doesn't matter, we're still using Autodesk. So we went and we ran a health check on the project. So to begin with, add the attendees. Who's there? Then you start taking notes. So as you can see, does the project need to know how to check the latest version of Revizto? No, because it's on an IT store. Are you using clash detection? No. Why? And again, you're opening up that conversation. And what we found that this does is that actually adds a lot of value to when it comes to crunch time and they owe you money. Because you have this document that you can say to them is that actually you're not using clash detection. Do you need support on how to use that? Then it trickles down, comes to us as the implementation, and then we can go and sit with them and say, actually, we're going to start rolling out this on the job as well. You can do this at various stages on the job. 30% deliverables, 60% handover, even at FM as well. So this document is effectively cradle to grave for that project. When it comes to the sales, they have all the metrics. They can then do their magic and get more money out of them if they want. But again, it's an absolutely fantastic way of working. Now, one of the best things about this was this company were working with loads of different tools. Were in a room with big 4 huge screens on the wall showing us all these cool items that they're working with and how they're using Revizto for just little bits and pieces. I've highlighted one area in red. Now, I'm not too sure if you can read it. No, you probably can. Showed ACC live and it broke. We're sat there in the meeting. Me and my sales guy kind of look over to each other and give each other a knowing nod. So this is the problem this guy's been having. So again, when it comes to that crunch time and they're looking at getting the money out of this company to add more value to their projects, just leave ACC behind because it's not doing what you want to do. They can then feed this back into the IT and say, actually, this doesn't work for me at all. I want to use Revizto on this project. And it saves him having to go through the murky back doors of IT, install Revizto, and then it gets taken off. And he's having this roundabout discussion with his IT of how he can actually implement Revizto on his project. This was a basic discussion. What I wanted to do with this was kind of show some basic tools of what Revizto can and can't do, how you can put Revizto back into your projects, add value to it as well by going from the ground up. I'm not here to talk to you about huge, complicated workflows. I'm here to support you and give you implementation on those complicated workflows. I just wanted to go back to the basics because sometimes when Revizto is rolling out all these brand new tools and custom statuses, you sometimes get a bit blindsided and forget how to do the basics. And sometimes the basics in Revizto are the best aspect of it to begin with. The 2D, 3D overlay, saving those as views. I don't really see an awful lot of people doing that. When you run a class detection and you have that 3D clash on top of a 2D drawing, start saving it as views. Once the clash updates, that view updates as well. And you have that drawing overlaid on top of the clash. All these cool features that sometimes we even forget about as implementation that we have to say, by the way, you haven't used this. Do we need to have another session? Do we need to have a catch-up call and just show the wider team how we need to use these items on your Revizto project? So what I wanted to do now was, obviously I've shown some aspects of Revizto here that, again, you may or may not be using. So I wanted to open up a bit of a Q&A session just to see if anybody had any feedback, if there's anything that they think may add value to their project if you speak to your customer success manager, your implementation manager as well. So I'm going to open it up to the floor and we'll take some questions if you've got any questions for me today. Yes?
Yes, me? Right.
Just you for now.
So the model compare feature or workaround that you're presenting, just to be clear, so you're creating a copy of your Revit model, maybe last week of something, and you upload those, is that correct?
So the model comparison, okay. So you're still uploading the latest model. You're just renaming the old model. So you're giving it a name. So when you export to Revizto, you're published to Revizto, you have the option to append or overwrite a model or publish it as new. So you publish that as the new model. Then when it comes to reviewing that model and you're happy with it, you can strip out the old model and then start moving on. So again, there is a bit of work that needs to be done in terms of managing those models because you don't want the duplicate models in there. You're putting the new one in, reviewing it against the old one, then stripping the old one out. So it does take a bit of management, but once you've done it once or twice, I guarantee it does become like a bit of a second nature.
Okay. So I guess my question is entirely not that, but in relationship with that, we're trying to capture the issued version of a model, both sheets and 3D models.
Right, okay.
Can we work, so just to be clear, so we're trying to capture that while still exporting the live version every day, every week, and have the two versions on top of each other, both 2D and 3D for both versions. And we need to do some testing. What I hear right now is there will be issues with Jew IDs, but I think what you're doing might resolve our issue.
It should do. And again, if you're publishing those sheets from a new model to an old model, you're overwriting those sheets. So the sheets doesn't really matter too much because even though you're publishing new sheets, you can still compare the old sheets. You're always going to have that history of the old sheets within the project. Whereas the models, it's always the latest model. So that's why if you publish the model and the sheets for the new one, it's fine because you're only bothered about the model aspect of it. The sheets is always going to be in there and you're always going to have that history. Even if you did push sheets you didn't want to, you can revert back to the older ones as well. But again, this is a workaround. So you've kind of got to think of what works best for you as well. And if you wanted to drop me a line and hop on a call, we can always do that as well, because sometimes it's best to do it live, just to show you how it works. But again, as I said, you've really got to kind of pick your battles with what it is you're reviewing. So again, if you have those views set up for the risers, the corridors, the switch rooms and things like that, you're actually concentrating on that aspect and you're not loading anything else around on the outside. Then the color schemes are not going to blow your mind because there's just too much going on.
Okay, thank you.
Someone had their hand up at the back there?
I think it was kind of along the lines of the GUIDs where if you import a new model and as a new model instead of updating the old model and you rerun clash detection, you're going to erase all of your old clash history and your data, and then you're going to lose all that communication between it with all the new versions of the exact same clash. So I was wondering if there was a workaround.
Exactly. So again, it's more of a, how can I put it? It's more of a quick fix. You wouldn't necessarily run the clash detection with those two models in. You'd have to have basically a cutoff of when you're going to run that clash detection. So you've almost setting yourself a bit of a time limit of when you can do this model comparison. But again, I do really have to stress that it is a workaround for now. But we are really actively looking at this as a tool because I think the feedback is so intense in terms of the model comparison is that we actually really have to start looking at this now. I don't think it's anything that's going to be developed this year because the development that we're doing in terms of 2D permissions, 2D workflows as well is just that far down the line that is the next big thing that we're going to be looking at. So again, I'm probably going to try and do a webinar on this. So if you want to connect on LinkedIn and things like that, I'm going to do a webinar of how to do it as well. So I can actually show it you live in practice, because when you're showing images and things like that, it's a bit difficult to get the points across. At the back there, hi.
Has the idea been floated, or has anyone talked about if there is this model comparison feature, and let's say you sign off level 5 or whatever area in the zone for that, is there going to be a way to tie that to Flash automation where, hey, we're at sign off, if one of the trade partners moves, right, and they're the offending partner because we've already signed this off, but I comes out, makes a change, any flashes that come out of that zone that's been signed off is going to be assigned to, like, is it going to be that advanced?
That's a really good question. I cannot say yes or no to that. I cannot confirm nor deny. Again, it would be incredible if it would, because there would be no tool out there that would do that. Again, my model comparison experience has been with Assemble, and the idea of putting something up into the cloud to compare and do the takeoffs and things like that is a really good tool. But again, one of the things that sets us apart from our kind of software competitors is that we're working with these high quality models. Some of the projects that I'm working on are nearly 200 gigabytes, and you wouldn't push that to the cloud. So we do really have to think of how it's going to work, and there are going to be internal workshops of how we're going to do that. But I'm sure this will come up. I'm going to take a mental note of this for when we do have those discussions as well. But if you could link that model compare to the Clash automation as well, that's just going to, again, change the way that we do things as a company, because it's going to set us apart from everybody else. But that's a fantastic question, and probably one that I don't think anybody's really thought of yet, to be honest. So yeah, thanks very much.
I mean, we all want to keep coordinating through the entire process, but like once I'm signed out, I'm on level 30. I'm not worried about it. The previous 29 level anymore. I can't stay into it. Right.
During the user group, we discussed, I was in that group.
Okay, great, excellent, thank you. So we've got live feedback.
The main thing that we wanted to be able to isolate a zone and go back to a previous deal. And we also talked about being able to ear or tag the version number. So like this is our sign-off model, that's my biggest problem is, my guys in the field call and they're like, hey, there's a spring or a conduit or something in my way. Who screwed up? Where was it supposed to be? And then I'm on the hunt. Okay, sign off was this date. And you're searching back, trying to figure out when they moved that. We know it was here during sign off, but when did they move that? Was there a reason? Was it RFI, contract?
Well, it'd be great if you could click on an object and it was like, these are all times. These are all the same, but it was changed.
Right, but the main thing that we wanted was to be able to kind of hop back and try and find, because I brought up the fact, when my shop guys adjust a comment or mark on a sheet, it shows as a version. It's not a real Revit update or anything, but it shows as a version. So a lot of my fab models have 15,000, 16,000 versions to them.
Right, okay.
We manually, we push on a regular basis anyway every night, and then you'll have one or two during the day from the fab team. So there's a lot of versions, so it gets really hard to find out where that fell off. I had a job that we were putting inserts in, and it was busting the concrete out on the floor above. So now we have to go from having hangers to the deck to hangers going beam to beam. So we made this huge change and, moved all the hangers around, put in all the beam-to-beam supports, and then they came back later and the engineer said, oh, well, it was only the 3/4 inch inserts that were a problem, and we think we over-engineered that a little bit, so you can use a 1/2 inch insert, try and see if that busts the concrete. It didn't. So I'm like, and so I used Revizto and just hopped back through because they're faster than Autodesk to find your previous versions. But to get back to where the last time before we moved all those hangers around and changed them, because we want to see what we're actually going to put in there.
But therein lies another problem as well. If you're talking about versions of models, where's the cutoff point? Because if you have 10 gigabytes of models that you're publishing, you're caching all that to your machine. So by the time you look at it, someone's looking at, oh my God, like the cache on your machine is going crazy. So again, this is why I wanted this kind of Q&A session, because I knew the model comparison aspect was going to be a bit of a hot topic. So again, where do we draw the line in the sand of saying, right, actually, we're not going to go back 3 months in models. It's going to have to be something sensible and things like that.
I don't think that they didn't make it sound like that was going to be the issue, and they were going to try to pull the whole models. You know, you would pull the whole models, but you could isolate the area to speed up the process. But yeah, you're going to have to clear that temp file.
Yeah, exactly. I have to do it all the time anyway, because some of these projects I'm working on, it's crazy. But again, you know, we're talking about these giga projects as well, and they're ridiculous. And I do actually have to clean my cache every single week because I've got no room on my computer. So, you know, that is the next thing is that, yeah, we've got this great tool, this model comparison tool, but then you're going to be using it on these 100, 200 gigabyte projects. And so again, it's like you have to pick specific models. You're going to have to pick that specific time frame as well. So, yeah, I mean, if there's anybody have questions, sorry, I didn't want to jump the gun there, but yep, hi there, Duke. No, yeah, it's good. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The auditing tool.
Yep.
Is that available, or is that something that you, as the CS team, are bringing to the? Can I run it on my project, for example?
Yeah, you could. I mean, it's relatively new. So we're just kind of figuring out a way internally of how to actually publish this. But obviously we've got the Red Academy now with the LMS. So my idea is that if we have that format from there, you can either get your implementation manager to run it or you can do it yourself, then give that feedback in your session. So it's something that we are actively working on. Obviously, it needs to be fine-tuned a bit because at the minute it is kind of a bit generic to UK projects, and especially in the way that I word things, it needs to be a bit more universal. But no, it's definitely something that I'm discussing with the LMS team of how to get that up there. So, you know, once you have access to that academy, you're going to do the training and then just like, right, we're going to actually do a health check on our project now as well. So that's kind of like the next logical step we're going to go with it.
So today I'll be reaching out to the CS.
Exactly, it'll be the CS guy. Yeah, that's right. And again, one of the things that I kind of pride myself on as much as possible is we all do Zoom teams, we all do Teams meetings, and when you're in front of someone, it's just a better conversation. You can see the whites of the eyes, and I travel to Dubai, I travel to the Middle East as well, and it makes people engage a bit more. So yeah, is it Corey, your CS guy? Laura, okay, so again, we'll speak to Laura about this, but again, this is something that we've been running with in the UK. We just need to get a few more people on board, you know, across North America, and yeah, I'll keep everyone updated on that. Again, that's all right.
Different question, different topic. Installation tracking.
Sure.
Any good way? Because my understanding is to get all this green stuff that was installed, someone had to manually pick on site, like this object install,
Sure.
this object install. We have that for electrical receptacles and light switches. And I think if I show up to my electrical guy, say you need to pick every single one receptacle by hand on your iPad, I might receive that iPad in the face. So, any good ways of selecting, like, all the receptacles in my room, cross-select and install?
So cross-select, again, something that people really want that we're not quite there with yet. What you could do is you could do a quick find object. So you could find an object within a specific room. So again, if we're isolated into this section box, you could then go do a search within that section box and say, I want all the 600 by 600 luminaires. And that would then select all them, pull up the properties, and just do it all in one go.
So as he walks around and would say, we would need to, I'm in this room, cross or create a section box around this room, all of the receptacles in this room were installed, right? And
Exactly.
it might be a tough sell.
It might be a tough sell, but again, it's...
We use search sets for it.
Is that,
We
Yeah,
use search sets
search
for
sets.
it.
okay?
So like, especially with our duct spools, they'll select the one duct in that spool and it has the duct spool tag on it. So then they can just right click on it and do create a new search set.
Exactly.
And it'll bring up everything in that spool. But if they only installed those pieces in the one room, then they can right click on the duct spool tag. They've got that isolated. They can just zoom down to the location in the room and right click on that and it'll isolate it some more. It'll filter that down.
Yeah, for receptacle, I think it's because they're not spooled, right? So
Right, and I mean, it depends what your workflow
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
but you could do, you select the receptacles, it will select all of them on that floor, but then you could isolate it by the room.
yeah,
So if you're doing lights, for example, you could go off the circuit name. If that circuit
Right.
name's unique to a handful of lights, There you go.
Yeah.
Easy win. So obviously, ductwork's a different one. It's going to be, ductwork for me is one that you probably would have to go through and do it manually because you're obviously going to be working on specific branches, specific areas as well. So that would be for me more of a manual selection. But for things like say, receptacles or anything that has a unique ID, pick those, work with it, see if you can create a search set that way.
Yeah, that's it's gonna be an interesting sell.
Yeah. Everything is to people out on site. I used to work for a company, I used to fit boiler flues, and our remit was to go out on site, make as big of a mess as possible, put the flues in, foam it up, off we go. And it would have been great to have something like this where we could accurately do things and, work in a bit more of a collaborative environment. But yeah, it's, site's one kind of thing in its own. But yeah, you'll get there. It's a culture change as well, really, that you've got to think about. Not everything can be automated. Sometimes you do have to do the point and click.
Yeah. Right, thank you.
No problem at all. So got 5 minutes left. Oh, question in the back, sorry there.
To add to that, so can you go, then usually you're dealing with, right, I've got these phases in these particular areas based on the construction schedules.
Mm-hmm.
So you break out your job and your areas based on that.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my phases, my areas, this is where I've got to be. Can you then take that and go system by system and track in that way?
Yeah, you could easily.
And I've done all of the duct that's in this area, all the piping, all the plumbing, but by system in there, and that's a check that hits all the systems that are in that particular area that you have then broke out.
Yeah, so again, it's working with your search sets in a way that you have to group items. So yeah, the initial setup. So you would do your search within a zone, then group and search by a specific property as well. So effectively, you're just building that search set from the top down. So when Revizto is looking for it, it's looking in one area, then it's looking for the system, then it's looking for the system type. So again, it's cascading is probably the best way to put it. You're looking at the top, looking down as well. So yeah, it would work easily that way. And you've got to remember as well that every single piece of metadata in Revizto, so we're looking here, we have identity data, element ID, phases, anything like that. Again, those custom properties would really, really help on that front. So select any of those items and you can create that search from that as well. So it's just kind of thinking of the strategy of how you want it to work. But yeah, it would work absolutely brilliant that way.
Exactly what you said. You're not clicking on every single one of these things by item, but you also want to track progress. So you probably should, I would break that down even further into those phases where maybe I'm halfway through, I can see that I'm progressing.
Yeah.
On this date, I'm halfway in. Based on this turning green in this area, am I really on schedule? Am I not? No, just different ways.
No, and I really appreciate the feedback because is it Corey at the back there? We were talking yesterday. Casey, sorry, I do apologize. Casey was showing me again the kind of advanced work packages and the spooling and all that kind of stuff. And I'm working closely with someone looking to get into the oil and gas and the AWP and the prefab workflows as well. So this is what really helps because obviously this would not work for that. So how do I then take this to developers and say, by the way, we're going to be working on these big pipe spools. So how do we then get that to work as well? So that's what these sessions are about. It's about feedback. It's about speaking to you guys what does and doesn't work as well, because this works for me now. It's not going to work for you. So how do we actually manipulate this to get it to work in the long run? So I really appreciate the feedback. I think it's been a really good conversation. Thank you very much for attending this session. Really well received. And yeah, enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you very much.